or blessing, what comes to mind? Maybe you think of the phrase, well, bless your heart. Have you heard that before? So if you're from the South, you know that that is not a blessing. Just in case you did not know. Maybe you've had a run-in with a very enthusiastic cashier at the grocery store who offered you to have a blessed day. Well, you know, I have friends who I ask often, how are you? And I already know the ones who are going to say the one-word retort, blessed. But then I also want to ask, okay, so really, how are you? And I think it might kind of spiral out of control. We would just kind of keep that going forever. So if I'm going to be really honest with you, words like blessed and blessing make me just a little bit uncomfortable. Something in the way I hear them just sounds a little empty, a little hollow, and it kind of inserts an air of religiosity in maybe the cashier experience that, you know, may or may not really need to be there. But as a chaplain, I've been taught to peel back the words, what's underneath them, what is really at the heart of them. I haven't completely done that with the word blessed, but I'm always a little wondering, you know, is it meant to be a mini sermon of sorts? Is it kind of like a Christian fish on the back of a car so other blessed people can find their own? I never really know. So in our culture, and especially in our Southern culture, that's my connotation of the word that's always made my skin crawl just a little bit. In our world, it's become a catchphrase more than an actual blessing. It seems like we're eager to bless a day or bless a meal, but maybe not bless each other. So what would that look like anyway? It seems like the true meaning of blessing has gotten lost. And this word has been on my mind, and I think it's time we reclaimed it and acknowledged the power and the immensity of this tiny little word, bless. But before we get there, we're going to take a journey into some other words. So let's start with one that is the opposite of bless. It's a word that we also don't use very often. It's a word, curse. Now, in our culture, we don't use that word to describe it, but we know what curse feels like. If I were to ask you a time in your life where you felt like the outsider, where you didn't feel like you quite belonged, I don't imagine you'd have to think very hard or long to find that memory. Isn't that true? In big or small ways, we know what it's like to feel overlooked or forgotten. We know what it feels like to feel illegitimate or set apart in our difference that makes us feel like an other in some way. And I believe we know the despair of being the unblessed. So I'm thinking about the holidays as they come closer. And I think especially at this time of the year, those things are on our mind, thinking of the sting of the curse as opposed to a blessing, especially as we gather with loved ones and family. So maybe we felt this feeling of curse, of being maybe the least favored of our siblings. Maybe we felt the curse in a home environment that wasn't ideal. Whatever the case for you, I would wager that goes back to your childhood. When we were a kid, all those things that had the power to push our buttons are from our childhood. Those ancient feelings of longing for a blessing of love, of time, of connection, are remembered, as well as the curse of rejection when things just didn't go as planned. So memories like this are always with us, but I think they have a little extra potency at this time of the year, especially with holidays around the corner. Because with that, the past and the present collide to wage war on our emotions and our expectations. So what did we do when we were children and we craved blessing, but we were instead met with a curse? Well, the answer is another word that we don't really use in our vernacular. It's called vow. We made a vow, We swore to ourselves that when we were in charge, when we were big enough and strong enough and able enough, that we would do things differently. We knew that we would do things differently when it was our turn to do it. So maybe you had parents who were arguing about money all the time. Well, maybe you vowed that you would make enough money to where they never had to struggle anymore. Maybe we vowed to comfort mom so that she wouldn't cry. Maybe we vowed to do whatever it took so that we were never teased again. Whatever the pain was that we felt so intensely as children, we made a pact within ourselves. And there are countless of vows that we've made in those quiet recesses of our minds in those moments of crisis. And those vows may seem ancient, they may seem silly, they may seem meaningless. They have an impact on who we are and how we are today. So there's stories in a book. Myron Madden wrote a book called The Power to Bless. He is actually a hospital chaplain who was a mentor to my mentors. So he's in the lineage somewhere of my education. And he wrote this book about his experiences that I've echoed as I've met with people in hospital rooms. So he spoke of a man whose father had died when he was 10. So that man, as a boy, as a 10-year-old, he vowed that he would take care of his mother for as long as she lived. Well, he did. But what he didn't see coming is that she would not live forever. When he was 50 years old and his mom died, his world fell apart. He fell into a deep depression. And he had to make amends with the vows that he made. He realized that he had neglected his spouse and his children because of that vow he had made to take care of his mother. But not all vows happen in childhood. There was a 47-year-old man who never heard his father tell him that he loved him. And on the day his father died, his son was born. So he consoled himself with the thought that the son was sent to be a blessing in the absence of what his father had given. He finally came to the realization, my son is 15 and I've never once told him I loved him. He was punishing his son for not being the blessing that he hoped to get. There was a woman who thought, my daughter is going to be a doctor because my mom wanted me to be a doctor and I let her down. See, our childhoods were affected by the childhood vows of our parents that they carried into adulthood. So the cycle continues. Vows are powerful. As a chaplain, I see this deal making, this vow making all the time. I'll quit smoking if, I'll go back to church if only. The interesting thing about vows is that we make them to find a blessing. But in doing so, we become our own curse. We insert a hidden curse upon ourselves of guilt, of shame if we don't follow through. We hold ourselves captive to the vow we made. And then we curse ourselves and we curse the divine when we can't uphold the impossible task that we alone set. I don't believe that the holy holds us to those vows that we made in those critical circumstances. I believe it's us who are bound to those. So we've talked about curse. And we've discussed the vows made to compensate for that desired blessing. So what is blessing? Blessing is the breath of life that we give to one another. It's something healing, something restorative. If you're like me, it's the thing that triggers me to cry like a baby when I'm watching movies. I love to watch movies. So I think of the movie The Help. When that woman says to that little girl, you is kind, you is smart, what's the other one? You is important. That is a blessing. And I just cry and cry when I hear that blessing given. I think of movies like Good Will Hunting. The Robin Williams character is talking to the Matt Damon character, and they've gone through all this paperwork talking about childhood and the foster care system and the emotional abuse. And the Robin Williams character says, "It's not your fault." "Oh, no, I know. No, it's not your fault." And he pushes against that resistance that he feels from that Matt Damon character until finally he breaks through. It's not your fault. That's a powerful blessing. That's a blessing. See, blessing breaks through, and it leads to new life. It might be an affirmation, maybe a reminder of a truth, a glimpse of something that someone sees in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself. But it has the power to heal and the power to restore. It affirms and it values the other person. So if blessing is such a powerful gift, why don't we give it more often? So I think back, my upbringing, my childhood, and my faith formation was in a Christian context with the Christian scriptures and the Hebrew scriptures. And I was taught that those pillars of faith were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, why those names? Abraham to Isaac. Why Isaac? Technically, Ishmael was the oldest. He was born of the servant Hagar, but he didn't get the blessing. So it stands, Abraham to Isaac. Okay, then Isaac to Jacob. Why Jacob? Technically, Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau, according to the scriptures. And it says that Jacob stole the blessing from Esau. And Esau cried out to his father, "Do you only have one blessing? Bless me too." But he didn't. So it stands Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So blessing in many biblical narratives was out of scarcity at the expense of others. So if you alone are blessed, then everyone around you is less blessed by default. Only so many can make it on the boat, so they say. Only so many nations can have this divine blessing, some will say. Only so many who confess a certain belief statement, some will say, will have it. So these are the embedded and the implied notions that I was raised with. And I believe that these kinds of unspoken teachings affect our culture. Some will bless the police at the expense of black lives. Some will bless the L and the G of the rainbow flag, but not the B and the T and beyond. Across the country and around the world, there are groups that we bless, and in so doing, there are groups that we dismiss on that very principle. However, we Unitarian Universalists have chosen a different path. Rather than bless some at the expense of others, we have an amazing thing in our first principle to uphold the dignity and worth of every person. Not some people, all people. So when we hear the question of Esau, do you only have one blessing? We say no. We have blessings of words, of deeds, of acknowledgments, of affirmations. We can be like Oprah. We can say, and you get a blessing, and you get a blessing, and you get a blessing. Everyone gets a blessing. We get to do that as Unitarian Universalists. Even what Michael read at the beginning. No matter how you vote, how you identify, how you come here, we have a blessing for you. But granted, it's hard to give someone validation and acceptance if we're still looking for that ourselves. So I'm not sure what doorways or thresholds you'll cross this holiday season, or what blessings or curses or vows those places hold for you. But my hope is for us to find wholeness in the depths of ourselves. And wholeness does not come in isolation. It takes coming to terms with those secret promises that we made to ourselves and to others, to those that we trust. And as the person or persons that we always hoped would bless us, well, Myron Madden has this to say. As long as we can point to the monster in the other person, we delay the day when we have to deal with that person in ourselves. How do we identify with cursed persons or cursed parts of each person? We discourage the tendency to isolate and to banish our inner demons of fear, anxiety, and guilt to an internalized place, because that leaves us prey to hate, discord, and division. So it's not just something that we offer to a day or to a meal. It can be something valuable that we give to one another. So I challenge you to think of the curses you felt, the vows you've made, the blessings you both received and have longed for. And think about how and to whom you can be a blessing. The staggering truth is this: the cycle repeats until it's broken. But I wonder if we can be the ones to give blessing whether or not we received it the way we wanted to. This kind of blessing fits with our faith. We can offer blessing as a way to acknowledge someone else, to give dignity, to acknowledge someone's worth to all people. Blessings, we can give them in our deeds, in our words. It's relational. It's covenantal. It's what we can offer to ourselves and to those around us. So I leave you with a blessing from Avery Bellew, a transgendered friend, activist, and theologian, with her permission. So if you'd like, just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and receive this blessing. You belong. It's only two simple words. You belong. It only takes a moment to say, you belong. It can change the world for someone who has felt left out, excluded, marginalized, or cast out. You belong and you are loved. You can open your eyes if you wish. But my hope is that you will feel the power of these words. May you receive blessing, and may you offer it in kind. Thank you. Blessed be.